Diwali is round the corner and so is Samvat 2077. The year gone by has been full of challenges and the equity market has witnessed a lot of turbulence in this period. The biggest blow to the market came from the coronavirus pandemic, which led to a global market crash that began in late February and ended in the beginning of April. What did it mean for the performance of Indian equities in Samvat 2076? Well, the Nifty has gained 5% since last Diwali. The Nifty Pharma and IT index have been the rank outperformers with gains of up to 50%. On the other hand, the Nifty Bank has underperformed with a loss of about 10%. So what expectations should investors have heading into the new year? Should investors pin their hopes on a turnaround in the Indian economy or better returns in Samvat 2077? To discuss all of this and more, I have with me the veteran of the Indian equity markets and, of course, the big bull himself, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18 and season's greetings to you. Before I talk to you about the year ahead, I wanted to understand whether your mood has changed. Since we last spoke in June, which was the time that the pandemic was raging in India, we were also in the midst of the harshest lockdown. You had said then that you were getting a tad frustrated. In light of the developments that have taken place, the reopening of the economy, movement on the reforms front that the government has undertaken, are you less frustrated today, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala?
No, I never said in June that I was frustrated. Anyway, thank you for inviting me, Shireen, and season's greetings and a happy Diwali and happy New Year to you and to everybody. What I said that time was that I'm a tad frustrated by the slow pace of reforms in India. I was very bullish for the market even at that time. And I have no reasons. I think that pace of reform is picking up. And in the markets, I remain as bullish as ever. I was extremely bullish in June.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And I'm extremely bullish even today.
Yes, you were bullish on the markets. You were bullish on the markets even in June, but you are right to point out that you were frustrated with the pace of reform. So let me ask you about whether the manner in which the government has responded to the COVID crisis. We've seen more agriculture reforms. We've seen labour reforms being announced. The Prime Minister hosting a roundtable with sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, trying to draw in FDI and FPI flows to India. How does the India story stack up on the reform front to you today?
See, we must remember one thing, Shireen, that it's not easy to do any reform in India. I mean, the agricultural reform, at least, if I've talked to 5 agricultural experts and 3 agricultural companies, everybody is very bullish on them. But look at the way the governments in Punjab and Haryana and Maharashtra are reacting. So, but I feel personally that the government is doing extremely good reform and is hell-bent to do the reform regardless of the political opposition, whether from within or from the opposition. So I have to see things in the context. We are in a democracy. We have to carry people with us. So I am extremely happy with the kind of reform government is doing. I think the next one, they're going to pass the bill on electricity reform in Parliament. The bill is all ready. I think that's also a game changer. And I think there is going to be a only strategic sale of PSUs. So I think I'm extremely happy now that we are catching pace in the reforms. We are making efforts to attract capital, both foreign and Indian. And we Indians must realize that in a democracy like India, it's not easy to have reform and change. And there are vested interests for everything. So rather than June, my frustration has gone, is reduced 80%.
Okay, your frustration has reduced 80% since June. But, Rakesh, since you talked about flows, given where the global economy finds itself with the accommodative monetary policies continuing across the world, bond buying programs getting enhanced, what does it mean in terms of liquidity and flows into India? When we last spoke, you were talking about how FII ownership in Nifty 50 has halved in the last 3 years. What do you believe it's going to look like going forward?
I think the money is going to come. Not slowly, not fast, but in a tsunami. Because I think India is one of the last frontiers of markets where there can be substantial growth in the world. The world is awash with liquidity. That liquidity has to find an outflow, right? And India has, I told you that ownership in India now is far lesser than it was 3 years ago. So I think there is going to be a tsunami of capital into the stock markets, both in foreign and Indian. Because I think most Indians and foreigners are still not bullish about the Indian economy. And, the signs of the economy and the reform according to me, is going to see this year, suppose you have 10% negative growth. I think next year we'll have 10% positive growth. So we'll reach levels of 2019-20. And remember, in 2019-20, we lost 15 days in March, right? And after that, I believe we are going to grow 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I think we may need, it's my opinion, I have the right to be wrong. I think we'll reach the double-digit figure in 5 years. We have to have God's uncertainties on our side. And I'm bullish on India more than anything else for the economic growth that lies ahead for India.
A categorical assertion that you believe that there is a tsunami of capital that will come into India, into the markets and foreign direct investment as well. But what will that then mean in terms of sectoral themes that you expect to play out, sectoral bets that you expect to play out? If we were to look at what's happened in the last few months, yeah, go ahead.
Ma'am, it's a relay race. It's a buffet. Everybody is going to join in. So you believe in the Indian story and choose your stocks. And let me tell you, I am bullish that the Indian economy will grow. And the fact is that corporate profits to GDP in India at all-time lows. So there's going to be a double whammy. Percentage of profits to GDP are going to go up and the size of the GDP is going to go up. And then I believe with low interest rates and with low exposure to equity of Indians and in general a favorable outlook towards emerging markets and especially towards India is going to lead to a tsunami of money in the markets. I feel India is where we were in 2003.
Okay. You know, Rakesh, you talked about how India finds itself poised at where it was in 2003. What is your hypothesis there?
See, my hypothesis is that, India is going to 2003 to 2009, we grew 8 to 9%. I think next 4-5 years we're going to get there. Second thing is, there is total disbelief in the markets. Markets showing unbelievable strength. Worldwide, I think there are going to be very low interest rates, at least for the next 3-4 years. Right? There's a lot of reform that has taken place. Corporate profits to GDP are at all-time low. I think GDP is going to go up. Percentage of corporate profits to GDP is going to go up. Indian companies are, at their best efficiency as they ever have been. We have got a clean system. Right, lot of rogue entrepreneurs have been removed. So I think all these factors, I think India is going to enter a period of very high growth. So I think that, I am confident. See, I see a different India than most Indians. I see growth and prosperity coming. Right, I could be wrong, and that coupled with the platforms to garner equity into this country, both local and foreign. I think we are in a market which will surprise everybody on the upside.
But Rakesh, let's talk about your big calls now. And I want to start by talking to you about pharma, because when we last spoke, this is what you said to me on pharma. You said it's hit 30 to 40 runs at the moment. It will hit a double century. It's been a rank outperformer, whether it is on account of COVID, whether it is on account of the China Plus One strategy. This is a sector that clearly has seen a fair degree of interest. Do you believe that there is more steam here?
I think so, ma'am. I think last time I told you 30 to 40 runs. This time I'll tell you 40 to 42 runs.
So you will continue to place bets here?
See, ma'am, every sector, no sector is going to have linear growth. After a rise, every sector is going to stop for some time, consolidate, and then believe and make a next move. So I am not smart enough to know that now the sector has gone up, it's going to consolidate for some time, so let me sell and buy the other sector. Then the other sector after 3 months will peak out. Then I should buy back the pharma sector. Shirin, I'm not so smart to know when this will happen. I know that it's going to go up. There are going to be periods of consolidation and correction. And I don't attempt to time it so thinly.
You said that you believe this market is going to surprise us. Where do you believe this surprise is going to come in from? And I'll try and link this to what you told me previously. You said some of the biggest winners will be found in the most beaten sectors. So the surprise element, Rakesh, where do you see that coming in from?
In the most battered stocks. It could be metals, it could be the public sector.
Give me some of the spaces.
Metals, public sector, other areas of battered stocks. other areas where there has been total disbelief in the market over years. I think that's where the highest returns may come.
Since you talked about public sector and, one of the themes that you were hoping will take off finally is the strategic disinvestment theme. In fact, I was speaking with the Economic Affairs Secretary and he was very clear that the impediments are there. They acknowledge them for companies like BPCL, Container Corporation, etc. But they still feel that they will move ahead. Do you believe that this is going to be a big theme that will be revisited this time around?
No, ma'am. See, there are two parts for the public sector. One is the strategic disinvestment, but how do you handle other valuations? I mean, today you see HPCL, BPCL, so many stocks, maybe Cochin Shipyard, maybe I don't want to name too many stocks and I don't own any of them, maybe small ownership in HPCL. The question is, the one is you are going to realize value by strategic disinvestment. One, you are going to realize value when the owner treats his share better. Now, the buyback by HPCL is the first indicator that the government of India now wants to be careful and strive to work to enhance the valuation of its assets. So that is one medium by which I think the value of the public sector stocks will go up. A basic change in attitude by the government of India to treat its own assets better. Not just do things in a heavy, sell HPCL to IOC, sell REC to PFC, but do things in a more thoughtful manner which will create shareholder value. And the first indicator is the buyback by HPCL. And I don't think this has happened without the knowledge and consent at the highest levels of government. That's my guess. So I think that is one way by which public sector stocks will gain value. And second, of course, is strategic investment. And third is asset monetization. And I'm told they promised there will be no ETFs. As far as possible, there will be no sale except strategic disinvestment, right? And they will treat their assets better and not disinvest them in a haphazard manner. I think that could lead to, re-rating and re-evolution of the public sector stocks in a massive manner. So strategic sale is the ultimate, but there are other factors which will lead to better valuations.
So you anticipate a re-rating if, of course, this coherent strategy, not just on strategic disinvestment, but enhancing shareholder value for the public sector stocks plays itself out?
The first indication is the buyback by HPCL, and it makes eminent sense. So, I think this buyback by HPCL means they're going to do this in a lot more companies, in various manners, by no haphazard disinvestment, by buybacks, by whatever way. But the owner of the owner of these assets, mainly which the government of India now realized that we must work with governance and with legitimate methods to enhance the value of their assets. The buyback in HPCL is not only important for HPCL, it's important for what it is indicating. I have no information. This is my judgment from what's happened. Realizing that there is a lot of room for revaluation in public sector stocks. And that was not happening because the government was doing it in a haphazard manner. The government is going to manage the assets better. That's what HPCL's buyback indicates.
Well, time for us to head into a break, but don't go anywhere. We continue our conversation with Rakesh Jhunjhunwala right after this. Welcome back. You're watching our Samvad special. We're in conversation with the big bull, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Since you talked about beaten down stocks and beaten down sectors, let's talk about what's happening as far as real estate is concerned. Because for your theory of the revival to really fire on all cylinders, this is a sector that will have to start to perform. We're starting to see that happen, at least in some states. States like Maharashtra, for instance, on the back of the stamp duty cut, etc. We have seen movement there. Is this a sector that's looking good to you now?
See, in 2010, when the sector was blooming, they said, they remembered Mark Twain, who said the land cannot increase because you cannot manufacture land. Then people said land is an asset we should never own. So I feel the bottom is made in the real estate sector, unquestionably.
Okay, so you believe that the bottom is made and perhaps we're likely to see a recovery there. But real estate, aviation, hospitality, do you believe that these are likely to be the themes that we could play on the recovery cycle going forward?
Ma'am, I am sure 101% that if the world and India is to recover from this COVID, these sectors will recover. Right? Beyond that, I can't say anything. Because we don't have to invest looking at the next 6 months. I think the worst of the COVID and the worst of the fundamentals are behind us. So when the economies recover fully, the most battered stocks sectors will also do well. I'm sure that if there are 1,000 restaurants in India, maybe 300 will close down, but I think 500 will open.
Given the fact that you believe that this is going to be a sustainable recovery, that we're currently seeing the green shoots which have already become fairly visible across a bunch of sectors, in terms of future course of action or future levers where where the possibility of significant consolidation in some sectors, there's a possibility of consolidation in the banking sector. People are talking about whether IndusInd and Kotak Mahindra could get a deal going or not. How do you see the M&A story playing out for the Indian economy going forward?
See, Indian promoters are very sticky and emotional with their companies, but they are the old generation promoters. The new generation promoters are very open to consolidation. So I think consolidation will take place as a natural consequence of the opening up of the economy and increase in size of the economy and the attitude of the entrepreneurs. Another thing I want to point out to you, Shireen, you want me to say that which sector should Indians invest in. I am, I want to make my efforts telling Indians, please invest. The sectors will remain unimportant in the end. First, please take the decision to invest and enhance the quantum of investment. Instead of trying to take out from which sectors are bullish, which are not bullish. First reach the hotel, then you look at the menu, no? So consolidation is going to be a natural consequence of the growth in India, size of the market, the change in attitude of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. From the manufacturing point of view, Rakesh, and since you believe that this is going to be one of those sectors where finally we are going to break out of that zone of 16% to GDP, and the aspiration is to take it to double digits and significantly higher double digits, closer to 20 to 25% share of GDP. With this whole PLI scheme across different sectors that's playing in, with the shift out of China to other countries, perhaps including India, do you believe that the manufacturing theme is going to be the theme of this decade?
Well, I think everything in India is going to be the theme of this decade. Because if manufacturing grows, services will grow naturally. Ma'am, in this country, you look at software exports, I think we'll have $20 billion of average growth in software exports, 20 to 25 billion next 3 years. 15-20 billion worth of purchasing power is going to be transmitted because of that. I think we are going to become one of the pharma kings of the world. 40% of all medicines eaten in America are made by Indians, right? The manufacturing sector, you create ease of doing business in India. You have land available. You have now easy labor laws. You have India as a large market. You have 16% rate of tax. I don't know why investment will not come. Manufacturing, agriculture, the reform, some experts say in agriculture is equivalent to 91 for industry, right? If these sectors grow, the service sectors will by itself grow. So, every software professional, you invest, one car and one house is sold. So, everything is going to act on each other. The real estate sector is truly and fully, there is transparency, there is GST, there is so many things have been done. So everything, according to me, is going to come together. Everything remains important, and that's what is going to lead to the burst of growth.
Yes, this convergence, you believe, will lead to the burst of growth, in your words. But from a global perspective, Rakesh, what will be the triggers that you're going to be watching out for? We talked about what central banks globally are doing, and that is expected to continue, at least in the foreseeable future. But what global factors could determine or shape the course of our markets as well?
Well, I would look at the world economic growth. More importantly, I would look at inflation. See, if inflation comes, sooner or later interest rates have to go up. And logically, when you think that the amount of money that is printed and the fiscal deficits, right, inflation has to come. But look at Japan. I mean, you can't believe the debt to GDP ratio. I think the Japanese central bank owns 50% of the corporate bond market. Despite that, there is no inflation in Japan. So as long as inflation is not there in the Western world and the developed world, and interest rates are low, capital will keep flowing, right? So I think that is one thing we should look out. And I don't want some extraordinary economic growth in the world. But I mean, if you stick at 1 or 2% developed world, that's good enough for us. Beyond that, we need nothing beyond our borders.
One of the things that we spoke about was banking. And of course, for India to be able to aspire to get back to the double-digit or get to the double-digit growth mark, we will need for the banking system to deliver. We've seen some surprisingly good results coming in from the banking sector so far. Do you believe that the threat of NPAs, of bad loans, etc., on account of the pandemic, has that fear, has that concern abated a tad?
I think absolutely. I think the financial sector has crossed a hump, because the reason why the valuations went down post the COVID was the fear of large-scale defaults and the need for capital in the banking system. Now it is very clear that the defaults that are now anticipated are far, far lower than what was thought about in June and July, right? So that hump is created. Of course, the actual hump has not still been crossed, but the expectation as of today is there is no problem, or the problem is far smaller than what we had anticipated. And I personally feel in the corporate side that there is not any stress. I don't think on the retail side there is any stress, much stress, or there could be stress in the SME sector. And I think India will invite so much capital, right, that I don't think that, getting capital to banks through deposits and other means is going to be difficult. So I, for one, feel that, because the first thing that analysts look when a result comes is the provisioning and the debts, and not the operating profitability. And for me as an investor, what is important is the operating profitability as much as the bad debts, because that's what's going to determine the long-term profitability of the bank. So I think I was bearish on the financial sector. I won't say bearish, I was concerned. But I think now the concerns are very low, and that hump has been crossed, and Indian banks will be able to finance any growth in this country.
Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, what do you have planned now for the new year, for the Samvat? What are the goals that you're looking out for?
Well, I have two goals. God has given me a lot of wealth, far more than I need. Two goals. One is to improve my health, and two is to improve me as a human. So that I improve myself as a human. I think that's my biggest goal. And how I treat others, how I talk to others, how do I react. I want to be a better human.
What has this lockdown period taught you, Rakesh, personally? I mean, a lot of people have gone through this cycle of introspection, of reflection. What is this lockdown period where you've pretty much been sort of an island unto yourself, helped you discover or rediscover?
It has enhanced my... Well, it has taught me how vulnerable we are to him, how small humans are and how little is in our hands, and that we cannot go on abusing this earth beyond limitation.
Yes, that of course is an important lesson and an important takeaway, not just for us as citizens, but for policy makers as well. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, it's always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here. Once again, wish you a very happy Diwali, a safe, prosperous Diwali to you and your family, your loved ones, and we look forward to being able to speak with you again.
Same to you, all viewers and all Indians. Believe in India, invest in India, you'll make money, take it from me.
You're almost sounding like the Prime Minister.
No, Shireen, I feel
pretty
so
much
bullish.
what he said yesterday.
No, it's not like the Prime. I am not anybody's. Shireen, I am telling you what I feel from my heart. that India is entering a period which is going to be more different or very different than what most Indians are thinking. They are not able to assess, the kind of growth India is going to see. And I reserve the right to be wrong. But I do what I've done in life. I came to the stock market. Everybody thought I'm mad. But I said, no, I will go there. So I envisage an India which is far different from what most Indians are thinking. And the markets and the companies' performances are at least initially favoring what I think. So that is, cementing my beliefs further. So I'm not saying,
well, we
and I don't understand one thing. At one time they call me Big Bull.
Yes.
Pardon? And I don't understand one thing. At some time people call me Big Bull, so they think I'm Harshad Mehta. Then they call me the Warren Buffett of India. So I don't know what I'm called. At one point I'm similar to Harshad Mehta. At one point I'm similar to Mr. Buffett. I don't know what I am.
What would you like to be? What would you like to be known as?
Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. I don't want to be the copycat of anybody. Yeah?
Well, they certainly did break the mold when they made you Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. One of a kind, most definitely. Always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Many thanks for your time. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this CNBC TV 18 special. Thanks very much for watching our Samvat special.